Have you ever stopped to carefully observe the sound of your awakening? For many, it is not the bird's song or the silence of the morning, but the plastic snap of a blister pack being opened on the bedside table. There is a profound question that we rarely dare to ask after 60. Who is really in command of your biology, you or the chemical substance that regulates your blood pressure, your sugar, and your sleep? Often we accept medication dependency as a mandatory toll of time, an acceptable convenience fee to keep functioning. However, what is rarely said is that this passive acceptance hides a silent danger that drains your autonomy drop by drop, masking itself as natural aging. The true metric of a powerful old age is not the total absence of wrinkles, but the sovereignty of those who still govern their own lives. Imagine belonging to a select group that crosses the threshold of maturity with unshakable metabolic resilience, without needing external interventions to perform the most basic functions of the human body. They are not heirs to miraculous genetics, but guardians of a secret that conventional medicine often ignores. Pharmacological independence is the greatest indicator of biological power and vitality after the age of 60. Today, we will reveal why the ability to maintain homeostasis without chemical crutches is the definitive proof that your mitochondria are efficient and your nervous system is preserved. There is a discovery that completely changes the perception of aging, transforming the fear of fragility into the opportunity to reach an elite level in terms of functional life expectancy. This knowledge will ensure that you maintain the mental clarity and muscular strength necessary to never depend on the help or will of others. Modern society and the healthcare system itself have ended up normalizing a worrying scenario. The idea that, upon crossing the threshold of 60, the daily consumption of a pill for every vital function is an inevitable rite of passage. This phenomenon is deeply ignored because it has been labeled as preventive care, when in reality it often transforms into a chemical dependency that masks the true health of the organism. Millions of people around the world accept prescriptions for mild hypertension, borderline glycemic control, or sleep inducers without questioning whether their bodies still possess the latent capacity to self-regulate. The danger becomes silent precisely because this mass medicalization strips the individual of the perception of their own biological strength, creating an illusion of security while the natural system of defense and balance is gradually replaced by synthetic substances that do not always respect the individuality of each metabolism. As we reach full maturity, our bodies undergo significant biological transformations that alter how we process external substances and maintain internal harmony. There is naturally a reduction in vascular flexibility, arteries become less elastic, and insulin resistance tends to increase silently, making it harder to process glucose in the blood. Furthermore, the circadian rhythm suffers oscillations, reducing the natural production of melatonin and fragmenting the nocturnal rest essential for cellular and cognitive repair. Physiologically, the liver and kidneys begin to reduce their clearance capacity, which means that any introduced medication remains active and circulating in the organism for much longer than in a younger person. This biological vulnerability makes the introduction of multiple drugs a calculated risk, as the threshold for chronic systemic inflammation decreases drastically, requiring a body with highly efficient mitochondria to process such a constant chemical load. The great problem lies in the fact that the long-term side effects of these chemical interventions are frequently confused with the natural aging process itself, generating a dangerous vicious cycle. Symptoms such as mental fog, accelerated loss of muscle mass, and the slowing of motor reflexes are accepted as signs of age, when in fact they may be direct reactions to the accumulated toxicity of metabolic or psychotropic medications. This prescription cascade occurs when a new drug is added just to treat the side effect of a previous one, burying the original vitality under layers of unnecessary chemistry. Understanding this dynamic is the first step to reclaiming systemic integrity and avoiding the root of induced fragility. When a body manages to keep blood pressure, sugar, and sleep at ideal levels through strategic habits, it demonstrates a physical sovereignty that protects autonomy against dependency on others. The central conflict we face in maturity is not the inevitable failure of organs, but the silent neglect of our capacity for biological self-regulation in exchange for immediate chemical convenience. There is a deeply rooted habit of seeking a solution in tablets for every small alteration in blood pressure or sleep quality, ignoring that these fluctuations are often the organism's cries for help, requesting adjustments in lifestyle. This silent error accelerates functional decline because it replaces natural health signals with an artificial stability that masks deep systemic problems. By choosing the path of early medicalization without exhausting physiological roots, we give up our metabolic sovereignty and allow chemistry to dictate the rhythm of our days. This choice, often encouraged by the magic pill culture, weakens the vital connection between mind and body, turning us into passive passengers of our own biology. What is really at stake at this biological crossroads is the preservation of your autonomy, your lucidity, and your ability to move freely through the world without the constant fear of falls or mental confusion. When we allow dependency on multiple medications to take root, we also accept the exponential risk of side effects that mimic dementia, reduce muscle strength, and cause incapacitating dizziness that confines us to the home environment. The loss of functional life expectancy is the invisible price paid for not fighting for physiological independence, transforming a phase of fulfillment into a period of fragility. The true threat is not just growing older, but becoming a spectator of yourself, losing the agility necessary to make decisions or the physical strength to travel. Choosing the strategic maintenance of health is the only way to ensure that control always remains yours. The first fundamental pillar we need to deconstruct is the myth of medicalized aging, that dangerous cultural acceptance that aging requires a pill for every new candle on the birthday cake. This mentality creates a psychological dependency even before a biological one, where the individual comes to believe that their blood pressure or blood sugar are uncontrollable entities without constant chemical intervention. The aging body, however, reacts much more sensitively to excessive preventive medicalization than a younger organism, as its filtration systems are naturally slower. By ignoring this pattern of automatic consumption, you run the risk of entering the dreaded polypharmacy cascade, where a drug is prescribed just to mitigate the side effects of another already in place. The benefit of correcting this view is the immediate resumption of responsibility over your physiological health, preventing cognitive and physical decline. The medication cascade is an invisible trap that slowly strips away the dignity of aging, turning the elderly into chronic patients ahead of their time. Consider the case of a 65-year-old man who accepted progressive medicalization for blood pressure and mild insomnia. In a few months, the loss of reflexes and the sedentary lifestyle induced by dizziness pulled him away from his morning walks. This cycle ignores that the mature biology still possesses adaptation mechanisms that could be stimulated by natural means instead of only chemical ones. The functional decline resulting from this overload is often confused with senility, depriving the individual of their original clarity and physical vigor. By questioning the necessity of each substance under supervision, you pave the way for metabolism to return to its original frequency, protecting the brain from unnecessary chemical insults and ensuring autonomy. It is crucial to understand that the contemporary healthcare system often prioritizes symptom stabilization over curing fundamental causes, especially in the third age. This reactive approach causes the body to lose the opportunity to exercise its intrinsic resilience, atrophying the self-regulation capacities that are still present. The direct consequence of ignoring this pillar is the loss of sovereignty over one's own biological destiny, where pill schedules begin to govern daily routines and social interactions. Reclaiming control requires an active and informed stance, seeking doctors who value safe deprescribing and systemic strengthening. When you decide that your body will not be a warehouse for palliative chemicals, the benefit is longevity with much more sparkle in the eyes and firmness in the steps. This paradigm shift separates fragile aging from powerful maturity, Moving to the second pillar, we encounter the silent theft of energy and clarity, specifically caused by the most common classes of medications among those over 60, substances aimed at metabolic control and primarily psychotropics and sleep inducers carry a very high biological cost for the mature organism. These drugs profoundly alter sleep architecture, preventing the brain from reaching the deep restoration phases necessary to consolidate memory and clear neural toxins. Furthermore, many of these compounds interfere with mitochondrial energy synthesis and the maintenance of muscle mass, making the body feel heavy and the mind slow. To ignore this impact is to accept living under a fog of chronic fatigue and mental confusion, often erroneously attributed to the inevitable advance of chronological age. The rescue of pure vitality begins with the understanding that synthetic chemistry may be blocking your vigor. The impact of these substances on daily motor drive is devastating, as skeletal musculature depends on precise nerve signals and a clean metabolic environment to remain functional. When the organism is saturated with anxiolytics or hypnotics, fine motor coordination and protective reflexes against falls are drastically reduced, increasing physical vulnerability. The consequence of ignoring these warning signs is the transition to a state of fragility where simple activities, such as walking or climbing stairs, become monumental challenges. The benefit of seeking alternatives that respect physiology is the reestablishment of a clear connection between the brain and the muscles, ensuring that lucidity accompanies every movement. Living free from medication-induced numbness allows you to feel your own body again, responding with agility to the stimuli of the environment. This clarity is fundamental to maintaining independence, allowing decisions to remain yours. Many seniors report a sense of awakening to life when they manage, under guidance, to reduce the load of medications they had been consuming for decades without review. Consider the example of someone who swapped a sleep inducer for circadian hygiene and strength training, regaining the energy to travel and make complex financial decisions alone. This pillar highlights that maintaining lucidity is an active process that requires protecting the nervous system against substances that depress its natural function. The relationship between the excessive use of psychotropics and the increased risk of severe cognitive failure is a warning that can no longer be ignored in maturity. By opting for strategies that promote balance through physiology, you ensure the longevity of your identity. The vigor that emanates from a functional body is the fuel needed to enjoy life with intensity and dignity. The third pillar invites us to analyze the biology of the minority, that elite group of 10% of seniors who maintain enviable health without resorting to pharmacies. What does the body of a person over 60 who lives drug-free do so differently to maintain such sovereignty? The answer lies in the efficiency of autophagy, the cellular recycling process that cleans out damaged proteins and keeps the system operating like new. These individuals possess extraordinary metabolic flexibility, allowing the organism to switch between different energy sources with ease, keeping glucose and insulin levels always under control. Ignoring the need to build this favorable biological environment is the fastest path to fragility and accelerated functional dependency. The real benefit is understanding that this state of vitality is not a matter of luck, but a reflection of correct signaling. Belonging to this minority requires an unwavering commitment to preserving insulin sensitivity and mitochondrial integrity, the true pillars of qualified longevity. When the body maintains the ability to process nutrients and oxygen without chemical aid, it signals that all defense systems are at maximum readiness against degenerative diseases. The relationship between this state of biological preservation and the extension of healthy life years, the so-called health span, is what defines who will have an active or a limited old age. By cultivating these internal mechanisms, you protect your organism against oxidative stress and systemic inflammation, which are the basis of almost all modern pathologies. The power to age with dignity is in your hands, depending on your willingness to nurture the physiological pathways that promote the continuous regeneration of cells. This awareness transforms the perception of time into strength. Finally, we reach the fourth pillar, the shielding and reversal protocol, where we present the natural anchors that can effectively replace invasive chemical interventions. The most powerful tool in this arsenal is strength training, as muscle tissue acts as the body's largest glucose drain, stabilizing metabolism naturally. Additionally, the strategic use of morning sunlight regulates the circadian cycle, restoring melatonin production and eliminating the need for artificial sleep inducers that so harm the mind. The consequence of not adopting these practices is the inevitability of systemic failure, forcing the organism to rely on external crutches to survive. When you apply these physiological anchors, the benefit is the absolute protection of your autonomy, creating a solid foundation for lasting health. These simple actions offer a safe route to, along with your doctor, gradually reduce chemical dependencies. The practical application of this shielding protocol ensures that you take back power and control over your own biology, transforming aging into a journey of empowerment. Observing how the body responds positively to resistant stimuli and correct light exposure is a transformative experience that validates your capacity for self-healing and regulation. This pillar reinforces that it is never too late to start the process of safe deprescribing, provided there is physiological support built through robust and conscious habits. Inaction in the face of metabolic decline is an invitation to frequent hospitalization and the progressive loss of mobility that defines our interaction with the world around us. By choosing natural regulation pathways, you shield your future against the medication cascade and systemic complications. The ultimate goal is a life where the pharmacy is a rare resource, not a mandatory daily destination. Conquering this biological sovereignty is, ultimately, an act of resistance against the fragility that society tries to impose on the elderly. By prioritizing the construction of muscle mass and the natural regulation of light cycles, you become the protagonist of an active and vigorous aging. I would like to pause to recognize you, who are watching this content seeking the best for your health. If you value your autonomy and want guidance on living with dignity, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss our upcoming studies. Take a moment to comment below if you have ever felt a side effect of medication that seemed like just a sign of age. Your participation is fundamental so that this message reaches more people who need to take back control of their lives. Now let's move forward to understand how your biology can work entirely in your favor. Consider the story of two men, Alberto and Ricardo, both turning 65 with opposite biological realities. Alberto passively accepted every new prescription for small pressure oscillations and mild insomnia, which resulted in a cascade of medications that drained his mental clarity and generated frequent dizziness. Today, he lives under a mental fog, attributing his weakness to age, while his days are governed by rigid pharmacy schedules. In contrast, Ricardo decided to invest in strength training and sleep hygiene as his main regulation tools, keeping his levels stable entirely naturally. With a firm body and a sharp mind, he travels alone and makes complex financial decisions, enjoying a vitality that Alberto believes is impossible at his age. This sharp difference demonstrates that autonomy is the result of protecting biological integrity against chemical dependency. Human aging is not a random process or a biological lottery where some are drawn with health and others with fragility. On the contrary, every day of maturity represents the crystallization of decades of small habits that accumulate like compound interest in our physiology. Functional decline rarely occurs suddenly. It is a progressive and often silent wear and tear that begins at the deepest cellular levels before manifesting as a clinical symptom. It is fundamental to understand that your body possesses an intrinsic intelligence that responds directly to the stimuli provided, whether through vigorous movement or medicinal passivity. When we choose natural regulation over a chemical crutch, we are honoring the complexity of our biology and reaffirming that the wisdom of age lies in maintaining systemic integrity. Aging with power requires the perception that we are the architects of our own resilience. It is understandable to feel a chill when realizing how much our freedom may be hanging from pharmacy shelves, but the greatest revelation of this path is that fear should never be the final word. Although the risk of losing mobility or mental clarity due to chemical excesses is real and unsettling, the science of longevity brings a message of deep hope. Your body never completely loses the capacity to respond to positive stimuli. Even if you already use continuous medications, there is still plenty of time to strengthen your biology and seek a life with fewer synthetic ties under proper guidance. Simple changes, such as prioritizing strength training and sleep hygiene, generate real impacts on your independence in just a few weeks. Old age does not have to be a state of fragility, but a phase to reclaim vigor, transforming fear into conscious preventive action. Ignoring warning signs and surrendering to passive medicalization can lead to a destination that none of us want: the irreversible loss of our precious independence. If nothing is done to strengthen the biological base, the inevitable outcome will be accelerated cognitive decline and physical fragility that invites dangerous falls and constant hospitalizations. Imagine the suffering of becoming a burden to your family, depending on others for the most intimate tasks, just because your autonomy was suffocated by medicine. I would like to open a parenthesis for you who have made it this far. Share this video with someone you love, so they too can discover how to protect their own health. On the other hand, the scenario of those who act preventively is a vibrant contrast of dignity and vigor. By investing in natural regulation, you ensure that your future is written by your will and not by limiting prescriptions. Sometimes what we consider the gold standard of prevention is precisely what makes us slower and more fragile. One of the most counterintuitive revelations of modern longevity is that many medications used to supposedly protect the brain may be accelerating cognitive fog. Take the common use of certain sleep inducers. They not only turn off your consciousness but sabotage the natural brain cleaning cycle that occurs during deep rest. This means that while you believe you are resting, your brain is accumulating dangerous metabolic waste that favors decline. Another surprising point is how muscle strengthening can be more effective for glycemic control than some first-line drugs, as muscle acts as a metabolic vacuum. Understanding these nuances is the definitive turning point, shifting the focus from symptom management to the active construction of a sovereign and unshakable biological resilience. Change starts with small practical steps you can incorporate today to regain your biological autonomy. First, see your muscles not just as physical support, but as your most powerful and effective internal pharmacy. Start performing resistance exercises, as muscle tissue works as the body's largest glucose drain, directly assisting in the natural regulation of blood pressure. Second, establish an unbreakable alliance with morning sunlight in the very first hours of the day. This simple exposure perfectly synchronizes your internal biological clock, optimizing melatonin production and facilitating deep rest without dependency on sedative chemical substances. Third, learn to observe your organism's subtle reactions after each dose of medication. If you notice dizziness, mental fog, or excessive fatigue, note these events to seek a medical review focused on the safety of de-prescribing. These small adjustments in the daily routine ensure immediate utility. In this video, we have traveled a path of clarity about how biological sovereignty is your greatest vital asset in maturity, transcending the mere count of chronological years. We understood that pharmacological independence is not a mere genetic accident, but the direct result of actively protecting your body's self-regulation capacity, keeping it free from unnecessary chemical ties. From now on, observe your energy and your sleep as sacred indicators of your longevity power, always choosing muscle strengthening and circadian hygiene as your primary lines of defense. Every small decision you make today by preferring movement over passivity reverberates through decades of autonomy, sharp lucidity, and unshakable dignity. Reflect honestly, are you truly governing your biology or just managing symptoms? Comment your thoughts below, subscribe to continue your journey of power, and share this message. Your old age should be the peak of your control,